Teraz nasleduje príspevok od Paula Helmersa z firmy Mind Figures. Tento príspevok bude v angličtine, takže ak potrebujete tlmočenie, tak hľadajte vo svojom Zoome ikonku planety a tam si môžete prepnúť na tlmočenie. Hello, Paul. Thank you for coming and being the part of our conference. I'm looking forward your presentation. So, hello, and the word is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. So today, I'd just like to provide a bit of context on my background, where I've come from, and I guess my view of the world, and sort of talk about the Minor Figures story from my viewpoint. I'll go through our range, what we do, some numbers, some plans we have, general marketing, and just general observations at the market as a whole. So firstly, I'm from Newcastle, Australia, which is a small town a couple hours north of Sydney. It's a really diverse city. You've got beaches, nature. It was a coal mining town. It's got some of the best vineyards in Australia, and it's a university town as well. Roles that shaped my view, I think it's important to discuss this just so you know where I'm coming from before telling you about the Minor Figures story. So my first job was with a fruit and veg company in Newcastle with an Italian entrepreneur, crazy entrepreneur who would drive to Sydney, pick up fruit and veg, bring it back to Newcastle every day or 6 days a week. His work ethic was unbelievable. But what I learnt there as a 15-year-old working with a group of 40-year-old Italian men was that they created a really good vibe amongst the team, but also tried to push that onto their audience as well. So anyone coming in to the shop was greeted as a friend or a family member, not as a customer as such. From there, I went and done a retail traineeship when I left school with IGA, which is the largest independent retail chain in Australia. Worked with another entrepreneur, an Indian entrepreneur this time, who wasn't so personable, but was the best salesman I've met. Had a lot of strategies that worked really well, and he actually took me out 4 or 5 times to negotiate for a car. Not to buy it, just to teach me the art of negotiation. Just a really interesting way of going about it as well, and again, building brand in a different way. I then moved to the UK and ran bars in the south of the UK. That taught me I really didn't want to work in the liquor industry. But I did meet a guy from Melbourne who took me to a company called Procal, which was run by a Greek entrepreneur this time, a startup business focusing on milk for coffee. We were the first to do that at the time, and many of you may not know, but the coffee capital of the world is arguably Melbourne. So a lot of the trends that happen in the coffee world start in Melbourne. So it's a really good place to begin. I'd never drank coffee before, so setting up a lot of strategies to win that market was really interesting. I then moved to Sydney, run a sales team there alongside the state manager, and did basically the same thing, which I would do for the next 10 years. From there, I thought I could take over the world, so I started my own business. I saw a niche I saw that the almond milk craze in the US was absolutely flying, and thought there was potential for that to take over soy, which proved to be pretty accurate. But unfortunately, I was very good at selling product, but I wasn't so good at collecting the money that comes with that. So that always proved a bit of a challenge while I was running that business. But what was really interesting for that was that I bought in All Pro with my former Greek entrepreneur at ProCal from Belgium. And the main, I think, and a bit of a theme throughout this, is if you can get people to try your plant-based products, they will love them. There's just a stigma around plant-based, or at least that's what I find from a sales perspective. So that was really interesting. So what I'd do was I would go to a city, anywhere in Australia, because I serviced the whole country. I would go out at 2 a.m, drop samples on the doors of all the cafes before they opened, and then save my important meetings for throughout the day. And then at least that way they were able to try the product and I could get to 30 or 40 customers rather than just 5. But as I said, unfortunately I was very good at selling, not so good at collecting, and in 2015 All Pro couldn't provide us with enough stock to keep up with our sales, and so I had to shut that business down. Fortunately, I got a call from a mentor maybe 2 weeks after that, who said, "Hey, get off your ass. I know you're upset. I know business has beat you down, but I've got a job for you. It's to be the brand ambassador of the biggest dairy company in the world, that owned a milk company in Australia called Paul's." So I took that project on to basically take a retail brand into coffee shops, which is it's usually the other way around. I think working for a corporate business taught me so much after coming out of sort of entrepreneurial-based businesses. It's really hard for big businesses to scale. It's really hard for them to learn new things. They're very good at implementing strategies that they already do, but if you try and get out of that scope and maybe change their view, it can be difficult. We did grow that business from 10 million litres a year to 60 million litres a year when I left. But it was it was one of the toughest experiences I've had in any company, just to get through the politics of it all. It was also the first time I'd visited farms. So as part of my role, I tried to get a cow to cup project going, and it's an interesting experience seeing cows go through what they go through. And it wasn't the most enjoyable experience, let's say. Fast forward to a move to Europe, 2017. I pick up a job with another corporate in Chibo, looking after the everything but coffee business for Espresso Warehouse, where Minor Figures was also being sold. I did that for a few years, found exactly the same experience as working at Lactalis. Really hard to implement new strategies in a corporate business. Great company, but certainly not where I felt at home. I guess my takeaways from that, and it'll kind of come out through this presentation, is the only way to do great work is to really do what you love. I love the industry I work in, I love what I do, and I've been working in coffee for 15 years now. I wouldn't have it any other way. But I think it's important for owners and founders to be the same way as well, because the challenges you're going to face are incredibly difficult, and having that permeate through the business is really important. Mastering your strengths and outsourcing your weaknesses is another huge one. If I outsourced my P&L to my brother in my business, maybe I would have been more successful. Well, not maybe, definitely. I think since then, the pride goes away, and it's like, I'm really good at this. Let's focus on this and let's get better at this all the time. And not be so concerned about the weaknesses, especially when you don't need to be doing those. And lastly, and one thing that Minor Figures is really good at, customers will never love a company until the employees love it first. particularly in the corporates I work for, it was really difficult. There was so many people who didn't love those companies. Of course, there was people who did, but coming into a work environment where people didn't love what they were doing and would whinge about it to start the day was just not a great environment to be in. And I just don't think you can sell that onto a consumer. If your employees don't love where they work, it's just not going to work out. So, with that context, I'll take you through a bit about Minor Figures. I'll flick over that one. So Minor Figures started as a coffee company. So we're basically a coffee company that makes oat milk. So we saw a trend for cold brew coffee in the States. Again, the US starts most of the global trends. And the owners thought they could make a really good quality coffee, sustainably sourced, that was also shelf stable, and that wasn't around in 2014, 2015. So they did that, they launched, they got funding, they did all the things that go with that, and then the production manager went vegan in 2016, 2017. And so they thought, you know what, let's lean in. So they tried every plant milk they could find. Potatoes, peas, soy, almond, coconut, you name it, they looked at it. But from a sustainability point of view and from a flavour point of view, oat was always the one that won every blind test, which ticked both of their boxes, I guess. And so from there, they started to create everything with just oat milk. And it's the reason we just do oat milk now as well. So the founders, so there's three owners. Stu Forsyth on the left. He comes from a crazy entrepreneurial family. They also started, him, his sister, and one of his brothers also started the Keep Cup company, which is the world's first reusable coffee cup. Then one of their brothers also recently started a business called Returner, tackling waste in cafes from plates and cutlery. So he acts as our CEO, and he's now based in the US, but he is Australian. Jono, who's in the middle, Jonathan Chu, he is the only owner with a degree in business. He operates our APAC team and has been doing so since 2016. And Will Rickson was a musician, so he's kind of our creative aspect of the business. And he's actually starting a music project at the moment, which I'm super interested to watch how we're trying to build brand a little bit differently to how most companies try to build brand in our space. So once we put the oat into the nitro cans, we thought, well, if it's great for our nitro coffees or our cold brew coffees, it should be great for all coffee. So we thought, why not pack into the 1 litre Tetras, which of course Tetra isn't a great choice, and we are looking at other options for it. But it's obviously blown up and it's now 70% of our business. Everything we do as a company is barista standard. We don't add refined sugar. So, and by barista standard, I mean everything we do is for coffee. So if you go to our office in London, in East London, you'll be tasting coffees in there as we do every day with different coffees from around the world. And our product is actually always sort of changing. So we're always trying to make it better. It's a passion project. It's not just a part of our portfolio. This is what we do, and we're so proud of making that better and trying to win over the dairy market and get them off that into a more sustainable world that's better for coffee. Everything we do now is for vegans, so every day in our office in the UK, which obviously I'm not in, but they do have a vegan lunch that someone cooks that day. If you do want to have meat, you can bring it in. But if you expense any meals or do anything with clients, it has to be vegan. They won't pay for anything that's not, which is quite cool that they sort of talk the talk as well. We're also carbon neutral as of 2018. So we've got a few projects globally that offset our carbon emissions, notably in Vietnam and Peru currently. And this is a photo of our team from 2016. So our first 9 people in the company, 7 of which are still working for us today, which says a lot about, I guess, what they've created. So as much as they saw a right niche, they saw the right product, all of the choices they made, I think the Minor Figures superhero power is getting the right people. And I hope I can say this on here, but we have a bit of a no dickhead policy at Minor Figures, and if one does enter, they get found out pretty quickly, just because everybody's so helpful, and everybody's sort of supporting and living the same sort of lifestyles, etc. So we've built a pretty fair following on Instagram with over 80,000 followers. We've got a global kind of following of the brand. And this photo in the bottom of the guy on the bike is one of the founders. In week 2, we went to Berlin, week 2 for me. We went to Berlin, we picked up a new distributor, and we'd set up 35 meetings. We're struggling to get to them all across 3 days. And so Will's like, hey, I'll just get a bike and I'll just pedal around to a few. You jump in the car, and I'm like, man, you're an owner. You've built this beast of a business. Come on, you don't need to be doing this. And he's like, this is exactly what I need to be doing. Like, I hire people like you because you're better at this than what I am. If I can just help a little bit, and I like to think I can tell the Minor Figures story pretty well, then I can add value in that way. I think it gave me so much belief in what I do as well. Coming from the corporate environments where you're never quite sure where you stand, having an owner say that, and then another owner implementing an idea I had 2 days later that cost the business about £10,000, and they put it into action within 3 days, and we ended up picking up, I think, £300,000 worth of business out of it, all within the space of 4 weeks of joining the company. I was just like, it's so much better to work for a startup. And the marketing team does like to have a bit of fun. So the merch and the brand and everything that goes with it is super important to what Minor Figures is. The frisbee with the ducks, the shirts, all the stuff that goes with Minor Figures. It's almost an expression of who our people are and who our audience is. Yeah. So our current range, and I'll touch on the ducks as well. I think that's important. So you'll see ducks on all of our products that are associated with coffee. So we obviously started as a cold brew coffee company, and cold brew originated in a small cafe district on a river that directly translates to Duck River. So all the ducks are is just a little tip of the hat, a little salute to the cold brew coffee gods from us. And now Penny, who is our oat duck, is basically our ambassador for the business. And you will see her more and more and more as the business goes on. And again, as we do things a little bit differently to the other brands, you'll actually see less stuff on our packs and more penny. We believe that we don't need to shout at our customers about what we're doing or why we're doing it, that they will come on the journey with us and discover it for themselves. With that said, we do a barista standard version in the white pack on the left. In the middle is an organic oat milk, which has been absolutely flying, as you can imagine. We do a semi oat milk, which is basically just half fat and half sugar. And then recently, maybe 9 months ago, we started a 10-litre bag-in-box to get out of the Tetra for both cafes and for retail packaging-free stores. I think we've saved something like 50,000 carbon tonnes of CO2. Something like 300,000 Tetra cartons as well since we started that, which was sent to me about 2 minutes before this presentation started. So the numbers could be pretty close. This is coming though. I really don't think the world will be using Tetra forever. Where possible, I do think reusable is becoming a bigger thing, not only in independent retail, but certainly in sort of your main chains as well. So then we've got a ready-to-drink range of latte and mocha, alongside a chai concentrate. And then our cold brew range is expanded from black, latte and mocha. And recently we launched a chai latte and a matcha latte. Again, every product has its own little character, its own little story that we can sort of share and tell and drag the audience with. I guess the big difference between our products and everyone else's on this aspect is that there's a little nitrogen widget in the bottom of the can. So when you open the can, it releases that nitrogen and gives that coffee a really good freshness. Most cans on the market, when you think about it, you think of a flat coffee or something with loads of sugar, loads of milk, really bad branding, and just not very nice to drink. I implore you, if you're watching this, feel free to reach out to me after, and I will, along with my partner Greenheads, we'll organise samples to go out to everybody. Because again, the way to win the plant market, in my opinion, is just to get people to try the product. Once they try it, they're absolutely blown away. It's the only way to win them over. Yeah. So why oat? So emissions, land use and water usage are all extremely high on obviously dairy, but also rice, soy, almond and coconut. Whereas oat milk has the best overall usage. So that's why we choose oat. And obviously, as you'll see in numbers shortly, the craze for oat milk is not stopping, and it's only growing. So what's my role and what do I do? So I'm pretty busy. I manage our European business. So 26 countries we currently supply. I dare say it'll be 30 by Christmas. It's a startup. We still have that startup culture. I do every part of the business, whether it's translations on pack, whether it's logistics, marketing, still knocking on doors for cafes, the calls to the distributors each month. I do a bit of it all. But my day starts out on Slack, if you know Slack, where our entire business is on there, which is really refreshing after working in corporate environments as well. So you just sort of put down what you're doing, or the 5 most important things you do that day. But what I like about Slack is that every project we're doing globally is on there in a different thread, and you can see what's happening anywhere at any time, no matter what it is. Everybody can see what everybody else is doing. There's no secrets, there's no silos. It just makes business function a lot better. We use Mondays for project management, and then personally I use Instagram and WhatsApp a lot for whether it's new business, existing business, or distributors. So most of my distributors are in a WhatsApp group with me across Europe. Just a really easy way to communicate that. So the strategy is to win coffee first and foremost, then build online independent grocery whilst building the brand, and then to enter the supermarkets as the last stage of that. Ways we build brand, so again, you've got to get it into people's hands. So obviously giveaways, particularly in unis, and then we do a free day giveaway as well, where we pay for all the coffees at a cafe on a given Friday anywhere in the world. Espresso, no problem. Would you like a minor figures latte today instead? Minor figures are going to pay for that. Again, just to get people to try the product. Recently at London Coffee Festival, we did a pretty crazy light show, psychedelic light show, to emphasize the fact that you'll taste the acidity in coffee when you use our oat milk. And our marketing team, again, like to have a lot of fun with that. So we've got shirts and stickers and you name it to go with that. We also do the traditional kind of brand building as well, with store wraps, fridges, etc., etc. And then recently we launched into Morrison's in the UK, and we did a brand drive through ad spaces. Again, more traditional marketing, but with Penny front and centre again. In Czech, just to give you an idea, we're doing over 200 cafes. We serve over 2,500 coffees every day, and we're listed on Rolik and other independent retail as well. The next steps for this market are grocery and brand building. In Ireland and Northern Ireland, we're in over 400 cafes. We're serving over 6,000 coffees every day, and we started recently in grocery as well. In Australia, we started a couple of years ago, and obviously the growth of oat milk globally is continuing, but we contributed to 15% of that growth for the entire category, and we are listed in the 2 largest supermarkets as well. So I'm going to skip through this last bit because I've tried to speak slowly for you today. So any of these numbers that I don't get to, feel free to contact me after, and I'm happy to talk through those. Where people consume oat milk on cereal, in coffee, in tea. An interesting one where they're purchasing though, in the UK they're still purchasing almost 40% of plant milks through online retail, so internet, which I found really fascinating. I'm going to punch through these last. This is probably the most important slide, just to see the growth of oat milk. You can see that during COVID and even after, it's continued to put a gap between us and the rest. And that is only continuing to grow as well. And oat milk is now worth 42% of the entire category in the UK. So I will skip to the last slide. So oat milk is 7% of the plant-based category globally. It's predicted to reach 22% by 2025. In Western Europe, it's 20% of the category already, but in Eastern Europe, it's only 2%. But that's predicted to rise to 30% by 2030. So if you are producing any products, I think it would make sense to jump on the oat train. And any questions, sorry I had to skip through the last bits there, feel free to jump on the Q&A or contact me through any form of social media.
Thank you, Paul,
Thank you.
for being part of our conference and sharing your inspiring story. It was really nice for having you here.